no means clean. Barnaby felt his way to some straw at the farther end and tried to accustom himself to the illusion.
He then became aware that two men were conversing very near the door of his cell.
I tell you, Tom Green, I wish I was an officer and had the command of 2 companies. Only 2 companies of my own regiment. You'll call me out to stop these riots. Give me the needful authority and half a dozen rounds of ball.
Aye, that's all very well, Sergeant. The magistrates will give the needful authority.
Where's the use of a magistrate? Here's a proclamation. Here's a man referred to in that proclamation. Here's proof against him and a witness on the spot. Damn him, take him out and shoot him, sir. Who wants a magistrate?
Well, let the fault be wed, men. It makes a man sorrowful to come back to old England and see her in this condition.
I suppose the pigs will join him next, now that the birds have set an example.
The birds?
Aye, in this basket here, there's a raven that's got the cry as pat of any of them. Involves no popery like a devil, as he says he is.
No popery.
Damn me, if I would twist his neck round if I had my way.
It's mine! My pet! My friend's grief! Don't hurt him, he's done no harm! It's my fault I taught him, let me have him if you please! He's the only friend I have left now! You wouldn't hurt him, my pet, I'm sure!
Oh, damn you for the thief and rebel that you are! I assure you, if the rescue with me to decide, I put a final stopper on his road, and his master too!
You just brought me to a cage, man! If I was on the other side of this door, and then we got to part as you change him down! Goodbye, Grim! Goodbye, dear old man!
The one-armed man, his head covered and turned from Barnaby's gaze, tenderly took grip from the basket and shoved him through the prison bars, who, with his head bowed and his deep black plumes rustling and ruffling, seemed to understand and partake in his master's fallen fortunes.
Following their abduction from the flames of Emma Hairdale's home, that terrified young woman and the equally bound and silenced Dolly Varden were taken to an upstairs room of the Boot Tavern. Blindfolded and thrust into a galloping coach for miles, they had no idea where they had now been taken or why, but they were all too well aware of the man that had led their kidnappers and lit the first torch to the world.
Get over there.
Oh, my brave birds! Is your cage for the moment? Delicate birds, tender, loving little doves. Now, not a peep out of you, my chicks. Not that any screams would help you. This place is remote enough. No windows in this room, well watched on every side. And none of the fellows guarding it care for you as much as I. If you want to be untied, you'll stay quiet until I return.
Dolly, did it hurt you? Where have they taken us? We were hours in that coach, and they burned the war into the ground, surely.
Dear Emma, from what I can hear, I think they've hidden us somewhere in London on the edges of town. The soldiers are sure to come. We must be rescued. I know it. We must be released. But what will they do, think? As the home at the Golden Keys? Oh no, Uncle!
Dear Dolly, if we remain quiet and well vigilant of these ruffians, our chances of procuring assistance will very much increase. My uncle will never rest until he is found and rescued us. For that my dear Edward were in London,
And Joe
knew of our plight.
And Joe, poor fine slighted Joe. What a brave fellow he was, and how he would have rode boldly up and dashed in among these villains now. Yes, though they were double the number.
be silent as the grave! Or I swear, I shall stifle you with kisses. So don't be quiet, pretty mistress. Make a noise. Do. And I shall like it all the better.
Why have you brought us here? Are we to be murdered?
Murdered? No, my pets. There'll be no murdering. Quite the contrary.
Have you no pity for us? Do you not consider that we are women?
I do indeed, my dear. It would be very hard not to.
No!
Oh, she's fainted. So much the better now. She's quiet. Looky pretty bird. Remember what I told you? I told you! A kiss for every crime! Scream if you love me, darling.
I knew it, my dear father's at the door. I was sure of it. May God bless you, sir. Heaven bless you for this.
Hail, I hope you're as comfortable as circumstances will permit of. Dolly Varden, my darling, my own, my lovely one. I hope you're pretty comfortable likewise. You meet in me, Miss B, not apprentice, not a victim of your father's tyrannical behavior, but the captain of a noble band. Behold in me not a mender of loss, but the healer of the wounds of his unhappy country. Dolly B, sweet Dolly B. For how many years have I looked forward to this? Behold in me your husband. Yes, beautiful Dolly, charmer and slaver, Establishment is all your own. She's in an excited state and I don't know if she's well off. This shower remains locked in here together till tomorrow. Come away.
All right, come away, Captain.
Ladies, you'll hear more of our intentions tomorrow. In the meantime, make no price by age, for if you do, it will be known directly that you come from a Catholic house. And all the exertions our men can make may not be able to save your lives.
Mr. Dennis, the Newgate head jailer, unlocked the door to Rudge's cell, set it wide open, informing its inmate, "You're at liberty to walk in the adjacent yard for an hour. Mind, there are guards on all sides, so no slyness with the other prisoners."
It was a dull square yard made cold and gloomy by high walls and seeming to chill the very sunlight. Stone, to bear and rotten augury. The prisoner's attention was suddenly attracted by a familiar voice in song.
Indeed, these very mischievous powers may have been viewed in the more remote sections of London, at the headquarters of the United Bulldogs, the Boot Town.
man seen or heard of him?
Stag, you've just rejoined our troops. Have you seen him?
Ah, my most fine captain. There's a stranger who's been asking for you. Says he knows of the half-wit, but he's not known to us. We've kept him gone.
He is but one man. Let him come in.
You! This way.
Which is you?
I am. What do you want with me?
I have a message. You know one Barnaby?
What of him? Did he send the message?
Yes. He's taken. In a Newgate cell by now. He defeated himself as well as he could, but was overpowered by numbers. That's his message.
When did you see him?
On his way to prison, where he was taken by soldiers. I was one of the few who tried to rescue him, and he called to me and told me to tell you where he was. We made a good struggle, though it paled. That Barnaby's a bold fellow. He fought like a lion, but it was of no use. I did my best considering I want this limb.
If we bear this tamely another day, we'll see us all in jail.
Listen up, crowd, and rescue right there. This would not have happened.
Brothers, to go now in broad day would be madness. But if we wait until night with an ingenious plan of my own to Vizian to attack, we may release not only Barnaby, but all the prisoners and burn Newgate down.
We shall burn every jail in London. They shall have no place to put our prisoners in. Let all who are men here join with us and shake hands upon it. Barnaby out of jail, and not a jail left standing. Who joins? I join! No pope!
It was 6 o'clock in the evening when a vast mob poured Lincoln's Inn's Field by Avery Avenue, designed for the attack on Newgate.
You,
With Simon Tamper King, led the way.
Roaring and shaking like an angry sea, the crowd rushed after them.
Instead of heading straight down Holborn to the jail as all expected, their leaders took the way to Clerkenwell, and pouring down a quiet street, halted before a locksmith's house.
The Golden Key.
beat at the door. We want one of his craft tonight. Beat it in, no one answer.
Shut the shut. Both door and chains of a strong and sturdy kind, and they knocked without effect. But the impatient crowd raised a cry of
Set fire to the house!
The door was suddenly thrown open. The fellow locksmith stood before them, armed and defiant. What now, you villains? Where is my daughter?
Ask no questions of us, old man, but put down your gun and come with us, and bring the tools of your trade. We want you.
Mark me now, my lad, and you among him do the same. There are a score of ye who I see now and know, who are dead men from this hour.
Will you put down your gun?
Will you give me my daughter, ruffian?
I know nothing of her.
Take him, man! Let the man who tries take heed to his prayers. I warn him.
Put down that gun, or it will be worse for you.
Never mind his gun. I poured a mug of table beer right down the barrel. It wasn't to go on, not of you, was to know it up to the mouth. And gentlemen, I've been locked up here for safety, and my endeavours has always been, and always will be, to be on the right side, the blessed side, until we mount the Pope of Babylon.
He's grabbed out and taken to the nearest lamppost and hanged him. He'll never do what we ask of him anyway.
You have robbed me of my daughter, who is far dearer to me than my own life. And you may take my life if you will. I bless God that I've been enabled to keep my wife free of this sin, and that he has made me a man who will not ask mercy at such hands as yours.
Don't be a fool, master, but do as you're bid. You'll soon hear what you're wanted for. Do it.
I'll do nothing of your request, or that of any scoundrel here.
Here's a great head, he's an old man.
Respect to my grey hair, young man. My heart is green enough to scorn and despise every one of you. Band of robbers. that you are.
Remember, people, we want his services and we must have them.
Look, Barton, we're bound for Newgate Prison.
I know you are. You never say.
Yeah, you know I don't. You must come along with us and pick it with your own hands.
When I do, my hands shall drop off at the wrist, and you shall wear them, Simon Tappertit, on your shoulders forever!
Does the young woman to be released?
No, we need not let her out.
Well, she's done a good deed in the matter of the gun, has she not?
Yes, but she's crazy.
My sins, this lad is not a man. Oh, Simon, my forever, ever blessed Simon.
Hold up, will you? I'll let you fall if you don't. What do you slam your feet off the ground for?
Oh, my angel sins, he promised.
Huh?
Promised? Well, and I'll keep my promise. I mean to provide for you, don't I?
Stand up.
Where am I to go? What is to become of me after my actions of this night? Where resting places now remains but in the silent tombses.
I wish he was in the silent tombses, I do. Boxed up in a good tight one. Take her off, will you? You understand, right?
The mob was again pulled into the street. The locksmith was taken to the head of the crowd and required to walk between Hugh and Stagg. The whole body was put in rapid motion.
They bore down straight on Newgate!
Mr. Haredale sought his niece in every place he deemed it possible that she could have taken refuge. In Chigwell and in London he pursued his search. On this night, in his wanderings, he heard whispers that the mob were attacking Newgate, where that man was Rudge. If it were possible, if they should set the murderer free, was he, after all he'd undergone, to die with the suspicion of having slain his own brother? He had no consciousness of going to the jail, but there he stood before it. There was the mob, wedged and pressed together in a dense, dark, moving mass. Mr. Haredale was recognized.
Nay, be more yourself, Aziza. We attract attention here. These folk cannot, for men of your faith.
Leave me here, in heaven's name, my good fellow. Save yourself.
What can you do among so many men?
The gentleman's orders were doing something. I do like it for that.
What does this mean? How came we together?
We're here to help another captured by the mob. Then we saw you on the outskirts of the rioters. Pray, sir, come with us. You seem to know my friend here.
Sure.
He'll tell you I'm a man to be trusted. He's my servant. Pray, sir, come with us.
They accompanied him to a nearby alley in the shadows and away from the mob.
There, finally, they pull off what they wore upon their heads.
Joe Williams. And Deadwood Chester.
Take my hand. Don't fear to shake it. It's a friendly one, though it has no fellow. God bless you, sir. Take heart. Take heart. We will find them. Be of good cheer. We have not been idle. Times are changed, Mr. Haredale. And times will come when you ought to know friends from enemies. And let me tell you that before this gentleman, you would most likely have been dead by this time. It was Mr. Edward's sharp eyes that spotted you before that foul fellow did and gotten you away from such dangers.
What fellow?
That Hugh. He's now a leader of the mob in siege of death and has spirited away your Miss Emma and mine. There is Mr. Barton's daughter, Dolly.
But you are too exhausted and recognizable to be agents. I swear to you, we will deal with Nicole Hugh and find out where he is in Dolly and Emma.
We forewarned the military and the traps been laid for Hugh and the mob, but they've now captured Gabriel Barton and taken the Newgate lock. The stouter fellow has pledged to die rather than help them.
So we must return to the prison immediately, disguised as we've been for many nights. Stay here, Mr. Haredale. We will fetch you once Barton is safe.
God bless you both. For you are surely guardian angels sent to us in our very hour of need.
The rioters raised a great cry as soon as they were arraigned before the prisoners.
And demanded to speak to the governor before they had remitted the summons of any time.
When a man appeared atop the gate of the wall and said, "My fellow citizens, loyal and obedient to our good King George, I'm sure, what do you want here?"
Are you Mr. Dennis, the head jailer?
"Yes, I am."
You've got some friends of ours in your custody, Mom.
"I have a good many people in my custody."
The
to pick the lock of the great door. Bear witness for me, Mr. Dennis. I refuse to do it. Come what may of my refusal.
Good!
Where is that man that spoke to me just now?
Here!
Do you know what the guilt of murder is? And that by keeping that honest tradesman by your side, you endanger his life.
Let us have our friends, master, and then you shall have your friend. Is that fair?
Yeah! See how it is, sir. Keep them out. Once again, you robbers and cutthroats. I refuse. I refuse! You cowardly dog! Give her to me! I'll do nothing of your
Leave him to me! Leave him to me! Why do you wish to hold strength on such as he when one man can finish in as many minutes? You lose time! Remember the prisoners! Remember Barnaby!
The cry ran through the mob.
Hammers began to rattle on the walls.
Shops smell like hay aboard the prison gate, but there stood the portal still.
Meanwhile, others besieged nearby houses.
Broke out the furniture and piled it up against the prison gate!
They fired a pile of torches. The door, although quickly a sheet of flame, was still a door, fast locked and barred, and kept them out. So now great pieces of blazing wood were being passed above people's heads, to such as him,
Who stood atop ladders and cast these firebrands down into the yards below?
The door sank down. It settled deeper in the cinders.
Shorten, yielding, came down, crashing down.
Upward, pull, gasping, jeopardy!
Beautiful legs!
Crying on his feet, crushed beneath the smoldering weight of the monstrous portal.
Instantly shopifying on the sword from the other side.
Now filled with busted brains, something the riotous screamed and came to
Everything made about the violent labor putting them in the jail entry.
You leapt upon the blazing heap and scattered a train of sparks into the air.
No retreat now, lads! For Barnaby! The door's down, have no chance to take the whole prison! No Pumphrey! No Pumphrey!
You go nowhere, you murderous brute! In the very cells you meant to break! Men, reload and form a line before the opening! If the cowards return, they'll find us here all night if need be!
I'm a hairtail and Dolly, lately joined my legs. Remains cooped up in what had now been their prison for many days.
Hearing only the murmured conversation in the outer room of the men who kept watch over them, they listened attentively.
And now and then, a moan seemed to be wrung from a person in great pain. It must be some misguided papist who's been wounded. Hallelujah, good gentlemen, hallelujah!
Is it possible that you, who have seen these men committing the outrages you have told us of, and have fallen into their hands, can exult in their cruelties?
Personal considerations, miss, sinks into nothing for a noble cause. Hallelujah, good gentlemen, hallelujah!
If the time has come when they are bent on prosecuting the design which they have brought us here, can you still encourage and take part with them?
I thank my goodness gracious blessed stars I can, miss. Hallelujah, good gentlemen, hallelujah!
Held your tongue directly.
Which was you pleased to observe, Miss Varden?
Hold your tongue.
Oh, yes, to be sure I will. I am an abject slave, and a toiling, constant working, always being found fault with never giving satisfactions, potter's vessel, ain't I, miss? Yes, my duty is to humble myself before the base, degenerating daughters of their blessed mothers. Oh, yes, ain't I, miss?
Sir, have you come to rescue us?
To return us to our families.
For what other purpose am I here? But to preserve you.
Dolly, do you hear us?
Aid is most timely, sir.
That's the most Protestant lord above!
You bring news of my uncle, sir.
And of my father and mother.
Yes, good news. They are alive.
And unhurt.
Yes,
And close at hand.
there is no great distance.
your friends, sweet one, within a few hours' journey. You'll be restored to them, I hope, tonight.
My uncle, sir.
Your uncle, dear Miss Haredale, has succeeded where many of our creed have failed and is safely out of Britain.
Of your creed, sir?
I thank God for it. Does he desire that I should follow him?
Does he desire it? But we have no safety but in flight, and we are watched on every hand and detained here, both by force and fraud. But I, having powerful Protestant connections, happily possess the means of saving your uncle, and now I'm here, in redemption of my sacred promise to him, pledged not to leave you until I have placed you in his arms, and that I have forced my way here. Sword in hand, you see.
Don't go with him for the world.
Hush! Pretty fool. Be silent. Miss Haredale, time presses and danger surrounds us. If you decide to remain, remember, I left you with a solemn caution.
Stay so, one moment, I beg you. Cannot we go together?
People of all ranks and creeds are flying from the town which is sacked from end to end. The task of conveying one female through such scenes is enough. I have said she will be restored to her friends tonight, Miss Haredale. If you accept the service I tender, she will instantly be placed in safe conduct. Do you decide to remain? Do you stay? Or go?
Dolly, my dear girl, if we part now, it is only that we may meet again in happiness and honor. I will trust to this gentleman.
No, no, pray do not!
Do you hear that tonight, within a few hours, you'll be among those who would die of grief to lose you? Pray for me, dear girl, as I will for you. Say, well, God bless you. Say that at parting.
We have no more time for this. Are you ready there, outside?
Aye, quite ready. Master Gashford,
Is him to it.
My boy,
Oh, see here! Where would any of us have been tonight if it weren't for these two? Mr. Edward, oh, Joe, how light and yet how full you have made my old heart tonight.
It was Mr. Edward that knocked him down, sir. I longed to do it, but I gave it up to him. Come, you brave and honest gentlemen. Get your senses together, for you haven't long to lie here.
Let me be well used, masters. I have access to all my Lord Gordon's papers, Mr. Haredale. A great many in secret drawers known only to me. I can give some very valuable information and render important assistance to any inquiry. You will have to answer it if I receive ill usage.
Enough! You're waiting for outside, you hear?
And now, gentlemen, the sooner we return to the Black Lion Tavern, the better.
The outer room in which they had to pass contained signs of the flow of bulldogs.
Lying in hiding, Simon Taverted, burnt and bruised.
And with the gunshot wound in his body.
And his legs.
His perfect legs. The pride and glory of his life. The comfort of his existence.
Crushed into shapeless ugliness.
Wondering no longer at the moans they had heard, Dolly shuddered at this.
But neither bruises, burns, nor wounds, nor all the torture of his shattered limbs, sent half so keen a pang to Simon's breast as Dolly passing out. For Joe is her preserver.
Heaven alone can tell with what vague hopes of duty and affection, with what strange promptings of nature Barnaby watched and shadowed his father in the prison, but that a vague and shadowy crowd of such ideas came slowly on him, that they taught him to be sorry when he looked upon his haggard face, that they overflowed his eyes when he tried to kiss him, that they kept him wondering when she would come to join them and be happy. Is the truth. He sat beside him whenever they were allowed to meet in the courtyard, listening for her footsteps in every breath of air.
Barnaby!
What man is that?
You, only you, in your all those years ago. We waited for you to return to the Maypole after you had robbed Mr. Edward Chester. Oh, but he will not harm you now. Why, you're afraid of you? Afraid of grumble, noisy Hugh.
Why is he here? What is he doing?
He was shot last night. When they burnt down the front gate, he was trying to set me free. To set us all free. You like her now, do you? You like her now?
He has bloodstains on him still.
Does the sight of blood turn you sick, Father? See, it does by your face. What are you looking at?
At nothing. At nothing.
As he tended to Hugh, Barnaby thought how happy they would be. His father, mother, he, and Hugh and Grip. They could run away together and live in some lonely place where there were none of these troubles. Perhaps the blind man who talked so wisely about gold could teach them how to live without being pinched by want.
But Grip hopped about them and croaked himself hoarse with dire predictions, like that famed raven in that unhappy Scottish play.
A celebration table had been spread at the Black Lion Inn, and a company of Vardens,
Willets, a hair
and one Chester sat down to supper.
Subject worked on Mr. Willets' mind,
which he had never yet got himself to thoroughly believe. He took the strangest means of resolving his doubts, looking at his own arms and those of everybody else as if to assure himself that 2 arms, and not 1, was the usual allowance. Surrounded by faces with which he had been so well acquainted with in old times, John Willett recurred to his subject with uncommon vigor, apparently resolved to understand it now or never. At last, with the course of the meal done,
he stared at his son's arm with all his might. His mane took off!
by George, he's got it!
Yes, sir, that's where it is. His mane took off.
Tell him where it was done, Joe.
At the defense of the Savannah, Father.
At the defense of the Savannas?
In America, with the warriors.
In America, with the warriors. My son's arm was took off at the defense of the Savannas. In America, with the warriors.
Yes, Joe had lost an arm. That well-made, handsome, gallant fellow. As Dolly glanced towards him and thought of the pain he must have suffered, tears came rising to her bright eyes.
We are all safe now, Dolly. We shall not be separated any more. Cheer up, my dear, cheer up.
Yes, yes, oh dear, dearly beloved daughter. All is well now, and shall be better soon, I vow. Miss Haredale and I know perhaps better than your father what injuries you've sustained and the necessary medicine for your recovery. My goddaughter may be in need of the very same type of medicinals, in fact.
Wake up, she needs some ale. That's what it is, depend upon it. I do myself. Into the common, the whole company. I'll buy what's needed. Here's the little 2 chocolate this way.
I am sorry you take on so much for what is past and gone. Think of it no longer. You're safe and happy now. You must have suffered very much these past few days. And yet you're not changed unless it's for the better. You're more beautiful than ever, and you must know it. You're told so very often, I am sure.
I shall bless your name as long as I live. I shall never hear it spoken without feeling as if my heart would burst. I shall keep it in my prayers every night and morning till I die.
Will you? Will you indeed? It makes me very glad and proud to hear you say so. Your voice brings up old times so pleasantly that the peasant must. Well, it was to be otherwise and was. I've been abroad fighting. I've come back as poor and cursed my life and crippled for life besides. Polly, I did hope once that I might come back a rich man and marry you. But I was a boy then, and I've long known better than that. I am glad that you are admired and courted and can pick and choose for an happy life. The time may come where I may visit you as a poor friend who knew you when you were a girl. God bless you.
After 4 fearful days and terrifying nights, the disturbances were entirely quelled, and peace and order were restored to the affrighted city. As day deepened into evening, and darkness crept into the nooks and corners of the town,
Barnaby sat in his dungeon wondering at the silence. The silence that when in his companionship he felt at peace. Mother, how long? How many days and nights shall I be kept here?
Not many, dear. I hope not many.
You hope? Aye, but your hoping will not undo these chains. I hope, but they don't mind that. Grip hopes, but who cares for grip? Except for you and me. He sits in most all day in his dark corner. Think you'll they take his life as well? I wish they would. If you and he and I could die together, then there would be none to feel sorry or to grieve us.
They will not harm you. They never will harm you when they know all. I am sure they never will.
Don't be too sure of that. They said I was bold, and so I am, and so I will be. You may think that I am silly, Mother, but I can die as well as another. I have done no harm, have I?
None before heaven.
I then let them do their worst. You told me once when I asked you a deathbed that it was nothing to be feared if we did no harm. Ah, Mother, you thought I had forgotten that.
Let us be very quiet, love, and talk in whispers. It grows dark and our time is short. I soon will have to leave you for the night.
You will come tomorrow?
Yes, and every day. And we will never part again.
Mother, when I asked you earlier about my father, you cried, hush, why?
Do not speak about him.
Why not?
Because I am sorry he is alive. Sorry he has come back. Because, dear Barnaby, the endeavor of my life has been to keep you two asunder.
Why?
He has shed blood. The time has come when you must know it. He has shed the blood of the one who loved him well and trusted him and never did him wrong in word or deed. But though we shun him, he is your father, dearest, and I am his wretched wife. They seek his life, and he will lose it. And it must not be by our means. Nay, if we could win him back to penitence, we should be bound to love him yet. Do not seem to know him, and if they question you about him, do not answer them. God be with you through the night, dear boy. And with you. As his mother passed quickly through a yard on her way out, she saw through a greater door her husband.
Walking round and round.
Mr. Dennis, might I have a word with this prisoner? I know him.
Yes. But you must be quick, for I'm locking up for the night. I'll be but down the hall here if he troubles you. Do not go too near the bars, Mrs. Rudge, for your own safety.
Am I to live or die? Do you murder two or spare?
My son, our son, is in this prison.
What is that to me? I can no more aid him than he can aid me. If you come to talk to him, be gone. Am I to live or die? Do you repent?
Oh, do you? Will you, while time remains? Husband, dear husband, if you will but confess this dreadful crime, I promise you, in the great name of the Creator, that he will comfort and console you. And from that hour, I will watch you, night and day, in the short interval that shall remain to us, and soothe you with my truest love and duty, and pray with you that our boy may be spared to bless God in his poor way, in the free air and light.
Be gone. Leave me. You plot to speak with me so that they know I am the man they say I am. A curse on you and your boy.
On him the curse is already fallen.
Let it fall heavier then. Let it fall on one and all. I hate you both. The worst has come to me. The only comfort that I seek or can have will be the knowledge that it comes to you. Be gone! I curse the hour I was born, the man I slew, and all the living world.
And my friend the centaur goes the way of his mamma. I am not surprised. These insane creatures make such very odd and embarrassing remarks that they really ought to be hanged for the comfort of society. Pig, I am not at home, of course, to anybody. But the hairdresser.
I'm sorry, Pig, but I must see Sir Chester.
My good fellow, how come you to intrude yourself in this extraordinary manner upon the privacy of a gentleman?
Sir John, my business is not of a common kind.
Well, we shall see. We shall see. I'm sure we have met before, but really I forget your name.
My name is Gabriel Varden, sir.
Mr. Varden, the locksmith. Yes. And what can I do for you?
Sir John, I have come on business. Private and very pressing business.
See if the hairdressers come, Pete. Mr. Varden, I beg you'll take a chair.
Sir John, I have just now come from Newgate.
Good God, from Newgate, Mr. Varden. Well, there are jail thievers and ragged people and barefooted men and women and 1,000 horrors. My dear Mr. Varden, how could you?
The case is urgent. I am sent here.
And my good, credulous, open-hearted friend, by whom?
By a man called Dennis, the head jailer of the prison. For many years previously, the hangman.
And what does this gentleman require of me?
At the jail, Dennis discovered that one of his condemned prisoners was a young man, Hugh by name, a leader in the riots. From some words which fell from this unhappy creature, Dennis discovered that Hugh's mother had suffered the same death to which he was now condemned. One conversation led to more, and Dennis, the former hangman, discovered that he had executed the woman himself. She was tempted by want into the easy crime of passing forged notes. She was young and handsome, and the traders who employ men, women, and children in this traffic looked upon her as one who would go without suspicion for a long time. But she was stopped in the commission of her very first offense and died for it. She was of gypsy blood, Sir John, and had a high, free spirit. Efforts were made to save her. They might have been successful too, if she would have given them any clue about her history. But she never would, or did, until she had but a minute to live. Then she said in a low, firm voice, which no one heard but this executioner, "If I had a dagger within my hand, and he was within my grasp, I'd strike him dead before me even now." Dennis asked who. She said, "The father of my boy." Dennis asked if the child was still alive. She said yes. He asked where it was, its name, and whether she had any wish regarding it. She had but one. It was that the boy might live and grow in utter ignorance of the father, and that when the boy became a man, she trusted to God to bring the father and son together and revenge her through her child.
My dear Mr. Varden, what has this tale to do with me?
Sir John, at 12 tomorrow, this young man Hugh will die. I know you anticipate the disclosure with which I am about to end, and that you believe this doomed man Hugh to be your son.
My dear Mr. Varden, to what does all this tend?
I suppose it tends to some pleading of natural affection within your breast. I suppose to the straining of every nerve, and the exertion of all your influence for your miserable son. At the worst, I suppose to your seeing him.
Mr. Varden, have you really lived to your present age, and remained so very simple and credulous as to approach a gentleman of established character with such credentials as these? Hangmen and ruffians catching at any straw? Oh dear, oh fie.
Be better of it, Sir John, when I am gone. For although you have turned your lawful son, Mr. Edward, from your door, you have years to make your peace with him. But that 12 o'clock will soon be here, and soon be past forever.
Pete! Show Mr. Varden to the door. So, she spoke my name to her executioner. I would I had never seen that dark face of hers. This affair would make a noise abroad if it rested on better evidence. But as it is, I can afford to slight it. Extremely distressing to be the parent of such an uncouth creature. Still, I gave him very good advice. I told him he would certainly be hanged. I could have done no more if I had known of our relationship. The hairdresser may come in, Peak.
As the locksmith walked slowly away from Sir John Chester's chambers, the clock struck 12. It was a solemn sound, and not merely for its reference to tomorrow, for within that chime the locksmith knew the murderer's knell was rung. Mary Rudge's husband, father to Barnaby, to the last he had been an unyielding, obdurate man. He had hardened rather than relented, and that the last words which passed his white lips were curses on them as his enemies. Mr. Haredale had determined to be there and see it done. Nothing but the evidence of his own senses could satisfy that gloomy thirst for retribution. The locksmith knew this, and when the chime ceased to vibrate, hurried away to meet him. For these two men, Hugh and Rudge, I can do no more. But Barnaby, poor Barnaby, what aid can I render him? I never knew till now how much I loved the lad.
On that same day, and about that very hour, Mr. Willett the elder sat smoking his pipe in the chamber of the Black Knight.
When his son Joe entered, he put down his pipe and chuckled audibly. My father, you have spirits today.
Nothing particular, Joseph. Tell me something about the Salmoners.
What shall I tell you, father? They have come back boiled in a church mouse, maimed and crippled.
You was took off at the defense of the Salmoners. In America, with the boys.
The very subject I came to speak to you about. A one-armed man, father, is not much use in the busy world. He can't pick and choose his means of earning a livelihood. Father, Mr. Edward has come to England from the West Indies. When he was all sighted, he made a voyage to one of the islands, and, in short, got on well and is prospering, and has come here on business of his own. He's going back again speedily. Our meeting in the course of these late troubles has opened a path in life which I may tread without being a burden upon you. To be plain, can employ me. And I'm going to take my one arm away with him and make the most of it.
Don't go, Joe! You mustn't! You mustn't!
Don't! Darling!
Call me that always, and never leave me again or I shall die, Joe. Dear Joe, I always loved you. In my own heart I always did, though I was so vain and giddy. I hoped you would come back that night, the night you left. Through all these long years, I've never once forgotten you, or left off hoping that this happy time might come. And now at last, if you were sick and shattered in your every limb, I will be your wife, dear love, with greater pride and joy than if you were the stateliest lord in England.
What have I done to meet with this reward?
You have taught me to know myself, to be something better than I was, to know your worth, to be more deserving of you.
Oh, Father, you know who this is. It's your future daughter-in-law. I always loved Dolly. I'd say a word, Father, if it's only how do you do.
Sally, oh yes, why not?
To be sure. Why not?
Oh, why not? Oh, Sally, oh yes, why not?
Why not?
Barnaby was to die. There was no hope. They had tried saving him. The locksmith had carried petitions and memorials to the fountainhead, but the well was not one of mercy, and Barnaby was to die.
From the first, his mother had never left him, and with her beside him, he was, as usual, contented.
On this last day, he was more proud and more elated than he had been yet. And when she dropped the book she had been reading to him aloud, and fell upon his neck, he wondered at her anguish.
Grip uttered a feeble croak and lapsed into silence.
It was morning but moments ago. They had sat and talked together in a dream. And now...
The dreadful hour of separation was at hand.
Thank God, Blanco. Cry no more. You know how steady my hand is. If only silly mother what they shall see.
Fetch me the book I left within. Upon your bed. Kiss me first.
What can we? They do well to put us out of this world, for if we got loose a second time, we wouldn't let them off so easy, eh? A man can die but once.
One rioter was to die before the prison who'd been concerned with the attack upon it, and one directly afterwards in Bloomsbury Square. At 11 o'clock, the prison bell began to toll.
The hollow murmuring of the awaiting crowd was heard within the jail as plainly as without. The two were brought forth into the yard together as it resounded through the air. They knew its import well.
Good cheer, Barnaby. Don't be downcast, lad.
Oh, bless you, Hugh. I'm not frightened. I wouldn't desire to live now even if they let me. Look at me, am I afraid to die?
All's ready when the last chime is heard. Do you have anything to say?
Not I. I'm ready. Yes. I have a word to say too. Permit me, lad. I'll say this. If I had 10 lives to lose, I'd lay them all down to save this one. This one that will be lost through me.
Not through you. Don't say that. You have always been very kind to me. Oh, you shall know what makes the stars shine now. And Rich shall stay behind and safe. And cheer my mother's heart.
I took him from her in a reckless mood and did not think what harm would come of it. I asked her pardon, and his. Looky, you see this lad. You've often in the last few days spoken to me of faith and strong belief. Well, I had faith enough to believe, and did believe, as strongly as any of you gentlemen can believe anything, that this one life would be spared. Look at him. See what he is. If this is not faith and strong belief, where are they? What else should teach me? Born as I was born, and reared as I have been reared, to hope for any mercy in this hardened, cruel, and unrelenting place. On the head of that man, who in his conscience owns me for his son, I'll leave the wish that he may never sicken of his bed of down, but die a violent death as I do now, and have the night wind for his only mourner. To this I say amen. Amen.
There is nothing more.
There is nothing more.
Move forward.
sign of the Golden Key. Their emblem of the locksmith's trade had been pulled down by the rioters and roughly trampled underfoot. But now it was hoisted up again in all the glory of a new coat of paint, and shone more bravely even in the days of yore. The shutters of the shop were closed, however, and the house had a look of sadness and an air of mourning, which the neighbours, who had often seen poor Barnaby go in and out, were at no loss to understand. The locksmith hammer was unheard, all was deserted, dark, and silent. Barnaby mother here last evening, you told me?
She is above stairs now. Her grief is past all telling.
Barnaby is out.
He's been out all night. But that, of course, you know. He was with you the greater part.
He was. Without him, I should have lacked my right hand. He is an older man than I, but nothing can conquer him.
The cheeriest, stoutest-hearted fellow in the world.
He has a right to be. He reaps what he has sown, no more.
It is not all men who have the happiness to do that.
Sir, you love my niece and she is still attached to you?
I have that assurance from her own lips, sir. And you know I would not exchange that for any blessing life could yield me.
You are frank, honorable, and disinterested. You have forced the conviction that you are so. And I believe you have a name I have a deep reason to remember. I was moved and goaded by recollections of personal injury and wrong, I know. But even now, I cannot charge myself with having then, or ever, lost sight of a heartfelt desire for virtue happiness, or with having acted with any other impulse than one pure, simple, earnest wish to be, as far as my inferior nature lay, the father she had lost.
Dear uncle, I have known no parent but you, and I have loved you all my life. Never was father kinder to his child than you have been to me.
Edward, I have done you wrong, sir, and I ask for your forgiveness. I acknowledge to you both that there was a time when I connived to rend you to a summer.
You judge yourself too harshly. Let these things rest.
You bear a blessing from us both. Never mingle thoughts of me with anything but undying affection and gratitude for the past, and bright hopes for the future.
The future is a bright word for you. When you quit England, I shall leave it too. In goods and fortunes, you are nearly equal. I desire to add, as a token of my love, for pittance, for which I have no longer any need. Let our ill-fated house remain the ruin it is. When you return, you will command a better and more fortunate one. We are friends. When I look upon you now and know you, I feel I would choose you for the husband. Her father had a generous nature, and you would have pleased me well. I give her to you in his name and with his blessing. This must be stopped quiet. We should have foreseen this and provided against it. I will walk and talk to you.
No! She knows it all. Dear sir, she knows it all. We broke it out to her by degrees, and she is quite prepared.
Oh, such is the blessed answer of the best day's work we ever did. That crowd, the rogues, so it's been hard fighting to get away from them. Oh, and there it is, sir, the free pardon to Barnaby Rudge, made out and signed and given to a horse soldier for instant conveyance upon the place of execution. And that courier reached the spot just as the cart appeared in sight. And so I have brought him home.
The scene, a churchyard.
The time, midnight. The persons, Edward Chester.
And the Hairdale, a clergyman. They stood about a grave which had been newly dug, and a dim lantern shone its feeble ray upon the book of prayer.
There was no inscription on the lid of the coffin. The mold fell solemnly upon the last house of this nameless man.
And the rattling dust left a dismal echo in the ears of those who accompanied it to its resting place. You never saw him living?
Often years ago, not knowing him from my brother.
Never since?
Never. Yesterday, he steadily refused to see me. It was urged upon him many times at my desire.
And still he refused. Well, That seems hard. Unnatural.
Do you think so?
You do not.
We hear the world wonder every day at monsters of ingratitude. Did it never occur to you that the world often looks for monsters of affection, as though they were things of course?
They walked to the gate and departed the solitary grave.
One afternoon, the locksmith sat in the little back parlor of the Golden Key.
His wife had decorated the house with flowers for the greater honor of Dolly and Joseph Willett.
The recollections, too, with which they made merry.
The glee with which the locksmith asked.
Joe, do you remember that night at the Maple, when you first asked after Dolly? Or that night when she was at the party in the sedan chair, the way Martha had Miss Biggs throw those flowers you brought out the window? Well, that was rather heartless of you, my dear.
Oh, Barden. I'd been aware of how they felt about each other long before Joe and Dolly were. I'd said to myself, that young Willett is certainly looking after our Dolly, and I must look after him.
Now, Mrs. B, I'll see who it is.
What is it, Joe? What are you laughing at?
Nothing, sir. It's coming in.
Who's coming in? What's coming in? Oh, damn it, if it ain't Miggs, come back. The old story. That young woman was made to be a damper. Nothing can prevent it.
Oh, Master! Oh, Mim! Oh, can I constrain my feelings in these here once again united moments? Oh, Mr. Barden, his blessedness among relations, his forgiveness of injuries, his amicablenesses. To think that Mr. Joe and dear Miss Dolly has rarely come together after all has been said and done contrary. What sweet sensations has awoke within me. And did my missus think as her own Miggs would ever leave her? Did she think, though she was but a humble servant, that she would forget, though she was the humble instruments, has always made it good between them two when they fell out? Did she think that Miggs had no attachments? Did she think wages was her only object?
My dear, do you desire this?
I desire it. I am astonished. I am amazed at her audacity. Let her leave this house this moment. Oh, good gracious. Oh, good gracious. Oh, good gracious. Oh, good gracious.
Do you hear what your mistress says? I think you had better leave.
Stay. Take this with you for old service. Oh, good gracious.
I believe you said that once before, my dear.
Oh. Times has changed, isn't it? You can keep them down without me now. I'm glad to find that you've grown so independent. I am feeling a little sorry, though, especially considering how ill you always spoke of Mr. Joe, to have him for a son-in-law at last. And I can wonder Miss Dolly can put up with him either, after being off and on for so many years with the coachmaker. It ain't so much of a catch, is it? After looking out so sharp ever since she was a little chit, and costing such a deal in dress and show to get a poor common soldier with one arm, isn't it? I wouldn't have a husband with one arm if it was me. No, I'd have two arms, but instead of hands, they'd only got hooks at the end.
Oh, my dear, this isn't something to cry for. It's something to laugh at. Oh, Dolly, you shall sing us a song.
grandma was seen with cheerfulness and hope, and left him the more depressed. With these feelings, he bent his steps towards the deserted mansion which had been his home so long, and looked for the last time upon its blackened walls. When he had nearly made the circuit of the building, there stood before him on his own ground the man whose presence he could the least endure.
What an odd chance it is that we should meet here.
It is a strange chance.
The most remarkable and singular thing in the world. I never ride in the evening. I have not done so for years. The whim seized me quite unaccountably in the middle of last night. How very picturesque this is.
You praise your own work very freely.
Work? Mine? I really beg your pardon.
Why? You see what fire and smoke of rage all around you. You see the destruction that is wanting here, do you not?
My good friend, of course I do. I'm very sorry for you, but you don't bear it quite as well as I had expected. What has your misfortune to do with me?
You were urged and stimulated to do your work of feat agent, but one who is a traitor, and who has been false to you as he's been to all others. With hints and looks and crafty words you set on Gashford to do this work. You urged him on to the abduction and dishonor of my niece. You did. I see denial in your looks, and denial is a lie.
You will take notice that I have taken the trouble to deny. Your discernment is hardly fine enough for the perusal of faces. Nor has it ever been that I remember. Or, in one face that I could name, you may have read indifference, not to say disgust, somewhat sooner than you did. I speak of a long time ago, but you understand me. I speak of your first love, now my deceased and dimly recalled wife.
You say you don't deny, you admit.
You yourself proclaim the character of the gentleman. I have nothing to say of Mr. Gashford.
Sir John, in every look, word, and gesture, you tell me this was not your act. I tell you that it was, and that you tampered with Gashford and with your wretched son, Hugh. God forgive to do this deed. It is to you that I trace the insinuation that I alone reaped any harvest from my brother's death. In every action of my life, you have stood like an adverse fate between me and peace. In all, you have ever been the same. Cold-blooded, hallowed, false, unworthy villain. For the second time, and for the last, I cast these charges in your teeth.
For the last time, be assured it is. Did you believe our last meeting was forgotten? What kind of man is he who entered with all of his sickening cant of honesty and truth into a bond with me to prevent a marriage he affected to dislike, and when I had redeemed my part to the spirit and the letter, skulked from his? Edward, poor fool, the dupe of such a shallow knave, trapped into marriage by such an uncle and such a niece. But he is no longer a son of mine. You are welcome to the prize your craft has made, sir. Haredale, I have always despised you, as you know. But I have given you credit for a species of brute courage. I am sorry to find you a coward.
Mr. Haredale fled that night, repairing straight to a religious establishment known throughout Europe for the rigor and severity of its discipline. He took the vows, which then forced shut him out from nature and his kind, and after a few remorseful years, was buried in his gloomy cloisters.
2 days elapsed before the body of Sir John was found. When his body was recognized and carried home,
Pig, the faithful valet, true to his master's grief, eloped with all the cash and movables he could lay his hands on. Lord George Gordon was solemnly tried at Westminster for high treason. Rashford deserted him, of course. Several years later, a meagre, wan-old man, diseased and miserably poor, was found dead in an obscure inn.
where he was quite unknown. He had taken poison.
Mr. Simon Tappitt, being removed from the hospital to his place of trial, was discharged by proclamation on 2 wooden legs. By the locksmith's advice and aid, in course of time he took a wife. With this lady he lived in great domestic happiness. Occasionally Mr. Tappitt would so far forget himself as to correct his lady with a brush or boot or shoe, while she, but only in extreme cases, would retaliate by taking off his legs.
Miss Meeks, baffled in all her schemes, turned very sharp and sour. It chanced that the justices of the peace for Middlesex stood in need of a female turnkey, and Miss Meeks was instantly chosen and promoted to the office at once, which she held until her decease more than 30 years afterwards, remaining single all that time.
Mr. Willett the Elder took up his abode in a small cottage at Chigwell.
To his new habitation, Tom Cobb, Phil Potts, and Solomon Daisy went regularly every night.
In the chimney corner, they all 4 quaffed,
Smoked
prosed,
and dozed.
as they had done of old.
Joe Willett
And Dolly Varden.
were made husband and wife and reopened the maypole.
It would not be very long before there would be seen many more
Small Joe.
and small dollies that could be easily counted.
And the grandparents, Gabriel
And Martha Varden became the most joyful example of marriage
to be seen in the British Empire.
When the riots were many years old, and Edward and Emma returned to England,
With a family almost as numerous as Dolly's, and one day appeared on the maypole porch.
Barnaby knew them instantly and wept and leaped for joy.
He lived with his mother on the maypole farm, working in a garden of his own and helping everywhere.
Never was there a creature more popular with young and old, a happier or more blithe soul than Barnaby. And though he was free to ramble where he would, he never quitted her, but was forevermore her stay and comfort. Oh yes!
and concerning reparation.
Though he'd been a bit molted at Newgate, he soon regained his looks and became as glossy and sleek as ever.
He constantly practiced and improved himself in the vulgar tongue. And as he was a mere infant for a raven when Barnaby was grey, he has very probably gone on talking to this present time.